All right, so Ricardo, if you don't mind, can you just fill us in on the Animaniacs revival? How did that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay. Well, one sec before I start, right? So, all right. So, CC, you're not familiar with Animaniacs, right? But
No.
well,
Okay.
you at least you have an idea of what it is, right?
Yeah, I have kind of I know the basics. I've seen a couple of the like clips and and like a couple moments, but yeah, just never watched it back in the day when I was a kid, and then like haven't really as an adult had the time. Not with something, not like something like Gargoyles. I haven't like had the chance to like sit down and like watch it.
Right, right, right. Well, for us in Trinidad, right? Trinidad and Tobago, right? We grew up on Animaniacs. That was like
Uh,
one of the I wouldn't say few, but just good amount of Warner Brothers animated shows that aired on
Mm-hmm.
well TTT, right? Channel 2 and 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alongside stuff like Tiny Toon Adventures, which was like way back like primary school days. Hysteria, you know what I mean? Pinky the
Hysteria.
Brain, spin-off stuff
Right.
like that, right? What I always dug about Animaniacs was just how it referenced, films and movies, right? Especially from their filmography. Case in point, the Goodfellas, which was a
Yeah.
reference, of course, to Scorsese's classic Goodfellas, which turned 30 years old this year, and just the wackiness of the show, right? You know what I mean? With Wacko, Yakko, and that, and just the idea that they are characters, they are animated characters that exist on the Warner Brothers set, and they just do all these crazy things, right? Of course, my favorite characters would be Pinky and the Brain. You know what I mean? Just so much great segments from these guys. I'll never
yeah,
forget the moment where they were this close to taking over the world, and the Brain was the one who actually slipped up. You know what I mean? And Pinky had to call him outfit. I love that, right? But yeah, I mean, there were just so much great moments from that show, so much, witty humor from it as well, right? So it came to a surprise to me and everybody else that we were going to get a revival for this, and it was going to come out on Hulu of all places, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's Hulu, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So yeah, so I didn't get around to watching this at all. Ricardo, you said you saw 8 episodes, so yeah, take it away. What was this new spin on Animaniacs about, and
Yeah,
how
so
were the 8 episodes for you?
right, so it's effectively just a time jump, just a time skip. They do the Animaniacs went missing roughly 22 years ago, and then they show back up, and they do a
Okay.
great they do this great opening bit. I'm sure you've seen this online where they do that big scene in the first Jurassic Park, where
Yeah.
Yes, 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 I saw that.
I
right,
was
because
in.
Steven
Yeah.
Spielberg, yeah, Steven Spielberg made Jurassic Park, he made Animaniacs, well produced it, and then they did this great bit of them bringing them back, and the idea of resurrecting old stuff, and you're not really bringing it back, and they make a lot of great jokes about that. It's the original Animaniacs was very meta, right? That was the whole
I
point of it. It's a lot of movie jokes, a lot of pop culture jokes, straight up a lot of geopolitical and political jokes. Like they
Mm-hmm.
used to make Boutros Ghali references and stuff like that. Like if you know who that was. It's stuff like that, right? It's all of these references to culture and pop culture, and much like how the early 90s did that. You had a lot of great animated shows that did that. The Simpsons did it, The Critic did it, and Animaniacs did it, I'll say, amongst the best. So if you knew the type of humor and what to look for, it was great, right? I was happened to be lucky enough to have an uncle who was a relatively young uncle who used to get the jokes and kind of explain it to me at the time. But I didn't. I was just laughing at the jokes because I was like, "What? I don't know." When Animaniacs was out, I was like 10 or whatever at the time, right? And this new show effectively just picks up the slack. It just says, well, let's just catch back up with the last 22 years, and we do that. And the first episode is effectively that. It just jumps into that premise of, okay, what happens if you take somebody who, similar to say, Rocco's Modern Life, what Rocco's Modern Life did
Right.
with their special, they're bringing back. They say, okay, let's just catch back up with the last 2 decades of pop culture, what happens and why and how to react to it, and what it feels like to live in the now, being a relic of the past. But that's the thing with Animaniacs. Animaniacs, by its original premise, was a relic of the past even when the show came out. That
Mm.
was the joke, right? And they made that great coming back to it. So the opening bit is great with that whole Steven Spielberg thing. And then they do a second great bit with a great Yakko song So because Yako is like the kind of the main lead character, if anything. With him, quote unquote, taking the new CEO swallows has a tablet, right? She has a tablet, and say this tablet has Wikipedia because she uses Wikipedia to learn who they are. And he does there's a nice great stupid point that I love, which is he takes the tablet and then literally swallows the tablet. That's the joke, right? He swallows a tablet.
Oh,
But
I get.
right.
But
But then what they do with that is that all the information goes into his brain, and he does a great job of catching up with the last 2 decades of what happened in terms of just history, right? Politics, geopolitics, pop culture, and how the world changed in all these ways in this catch-up song is a great bit. And that's the whole spirit of it. The entire spirit is doing meta comedy, and then they slather on a new layer of meta comedy. I was saying, all right, we had meta comedy then, but let's just do the meta of meta comedy of what it is to do a reboot, because they have a whole great bit about reboots as well. And I can't say I love this. I can't say it's too brilliant, mostly because it exists in the year 2020, and so I expected all of this. None of it is that. No, I won't say not necessarily progressive or not interesting, but it just works. Like just a quick aside, it does a couple of progressive points where it changes the lyric for one of these songs and like involving the character Dot, because the original lyric was Dot is cute and now Dot has wit. Little small change, right?
Okay.
But we get why it changes because the Dot character was the best character when it came to the observational comedy. That's why she worked. Even though the cute thing was just a kind of dumb gag at the time. They changed that. Little small things like that. It is a lot more progressive, right? It tries to be more they make fun of it, but they poke fun of the right things when it comes to say the progressive side of politics or whatever it is, right? So they had a whole character of Hillary Clinton, which make fun of. They have a small little gag in the background with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they put her in a funny little bit with that worked for me. They have a great bit involving the person who's running the Warner Brothers lot now, and she makes a great joke. I have no problem pulling up the ladder behind me, because that's corporate culture. It doesn't matter if the person's a woman or a man. There's a lot of nasty corporate people out there. They don't really matter, but they don't really matter if they use progressive things to get ahead. They pull up the ladder behind them. That happens a lot. That is a whole great bit, and then it then falls back into its original format of just telling these classic stories. It's just classic comedy gags and stories involving the Olympics, medals. They just update it, and it really feels as if I don't like it as much as say DuckTales, but it's really good. I get what they're going for with it. A lot of the bits work. I'll say the big disappointment, if anything, unfortunately, is Pinky and the Brain.
Okay.
Yeah, it just feels all the Pinky and the Brain stuff feels dated. Like I was a fan of Pinky and the Brain, and it was kind of funny to me, but like I don't remember it being that weak. So I'll say like this new stuff, I'll just say that they didn't update it enough. That's why a lot of it doesn't work. At least for me, like
But is it that they just following the same formulas before?
I think that is what it is. They didn't change it up enough to make it work, because they have like okay, so one of the best running gags in Pinky and the Brain was are you pondering what I'm pondering, right? And they'll do like the joke is they'll show some obvious linear thing of logic through the editing. So Brain will notice something, or you'll hear some piece of information, and it's the obvious plan that Brain will go forward with. And then you'll say, "Are you pondering what I'm pondering?" And then the joke is Pinky will always pull the rug from under the scenario by saying the most insane non sequitur, right?
Yeah, I think so, Brain. But
Right. Yeah, and it's almost every time, whatever they come up with is be really funny for me. This time they almost never do it, and I was like, what? Why? They do it like twice out of the 8 episodes I watched. I was like, what? Why would you not like lean into the strongest part of that dynamic? And I get the feeling that the comedy writers don't really get, whoever's writing this didn't really get Pinky and the Brain. They also do the fact that it's written. A lot of this was written in 2018 and now just made, so it doesn't update itself in the last 2 years or so of material. So yeah, but they do address that though. By the way, they say, "Oh well, we don't know what happened in the next 2 years. Let's just speculate," and they make a bunch of great bits and gags about that. I if you're an Animaniacs fan, I imagine you do love this. I haven't seen the whole thing. I heard the last couple episodes are very good, so I'll probably like give an update on the next BBB for that. But I dug it for what it is. It's pretty good. It's
Okay.
still funny. It is still moving at a good pace. The original Animaniacs was a fast, bit, jumping, and this one is up there for me. It holds up for the most part, and they do a good job with it. I can't be mad at any of this. It's fine. It's pretty good. So yeah, that's just me.
Okay.
Rated for yeah, 7 out of 10. Yeah, pretty good. 7 out of 10,
All right.
maybe even an 8 out of 10.
I had one question though.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's on Hulu instead of HBO Max?
I have no idea. I don't.
I was
I don't.
I was wondering that one because, like, I know that like all the different streaming shows. Part of the reason motivating a lot of these reboots is all these different streaming shows. It's an incentive. It's an incentive. Like, hey, buy our show because now finally, like, I don't know,
Right.
a new season of like here's the Invader Zim movie or here's a new season of Rocko's Modern Life.
Right.
But like, I'm still not sure why this is on Hulu instead of HBO Max, and I don't know if the show itself, since you talked about the meta commentary, ever addressed that.
I mean, okay, so I'd imagine they probably want to do that maybe, but the big gag, I'll say. So I'll probably miss a joke or two where they probably address that. But I don't know. I mean, I just get the feeling that it's just the normal bidding war stuff. Like it's just whoever's running Hulu just happened to pull the project on their side or whatever. It's a normal thing. Like again, capitalism as it is right now is not efficient. It's not meant to be efficient. It's whoever jump on it early. That's my only explanation behind all of that. That's it.
It's just hilarious to me that a show that punches at Warner Brothers and Warner Brothers CEOs so hard is on a streaming service owned by Disney.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened exactly there. So I'll just probably do some digging and find out. Oh, okay, that's why. And you find out, you'll read something in THR explaining what went down. I don't know. Whatever.
All right. Well, I will give this Animaniacs Revival a look. Not expecting this to be like top 10 of the year and whatnot, but I expect to enjoy it for what it is, man.
It could make that. It could do that in that sense. But again, because it's so meta, meta comedy. Meta comedy is something. Look, it's up to you whether or not that holds you. I know a lot of people like that shit. I'm a person who you really had to come good or know what you're doing with that stuff. Like only like a handful of people could get away with that. And it's something that, as I say, you have to buy your way into it. You need to build up that you have to put a lot of gas in that tank, so to speak now. And people burn through that fast, like really fast. Animaniacs doesn't burn through it because it's earned in their case, right? The franchise is earned all the voice actors they brought back. And you get the feeling that these people are just really glad to work on this project again, as it is, right? They got back everybody.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, let's talk about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion.
Yeah.
So, Tracy, I would love for you to do the synopsis for the special, right? If you don't mind. But before we get to that now, because we have to do this. Reason being kind of because one is Fresh Prince and two, CC hasn't gotten around to watching the specials yet. But don't worry, we're not going to spoil it for you, right? Don't worry, right? So, quick history with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? 1991. It's probably the same thing with you, Ricardo, right? And Tracy, right? Going from Trinidad. 1991. CC and TV6 hit. It's like, all right, cool. We have two stations now. And one of the first shows that they aired was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't that big into sitcoms because I was young, right? I was relatively young, right? I was still in primary school and whatnot, right? When I saw that show, I didn't know who Will Smith was. I didn't know who anybody was on that show. I was just drawn in from the word go. It was something about it. I think the mere fact that it was the first African American sitcom that I have seen, that's what drew me into it, right? It was just how it just felt like it came out at just the exact right time, right? Like I know the show began in 1990, right? But the mere fact that we got it a year afterwards was perfect because I mean it was a brand new decade, right? And we were just embracing more colorful outfits and hip hop music and all that kind of stuff, right? So it hit me at just the right moment, though. I fell in love with the characters, fell in love with the family. Just all the hijinks, Jazz being true and all that. Just all these great moments. And I just stuck with that show for all the 6 seasons. Actually, so a while back, like some years ago, I actually like recapped all 6 seasons. I just, I enjoyed it so much. I still regard it as one of the best sitcoms ever, right? But the thing that really amazed me about the show, right, is that even when it stopped, or even when it ended back in '96, Will Smith, right, who like I say, I didn't even know prior to the me watching the show for the first time. I didn't know he was a rapper. I didn't know he called himself. He literally called himself the Fresh Prince. I didn't know Jazzy Jeff was his DJ. I didn't know that till like years afterwards. Then when I started to learn more about rap music, right? But yeah, his career just blew up in a way that I never saw coming, right? And it's funny too because like along the same time we had Martin, which is a show that I really enjoyed too, but as much as Fresh Prince, mainly because this was more prime time humor, it was more TV PG humor, but still funny as hell, right? But Martin's career, Martin Lawrence's career never really blew up the way Will's did, even though ironically they starred in the same movie together, Bad Boys, which was really the show that kind of skyrocketed Will's career more than Martin's, if we were to be honest, right? But yeah, the way how Will's career just shot up was amazing. It was Bad Boys. Then the following year was Independence Day. The following year was Men in Black and his album Big Willie Style, which still remains one of my all-time favorite rap albums. I don't care if you call it pop or cheesy. I love that album, right? But yeah, just taking that out of this show and just me telling myself, wow, and this is where it all started from. This sitcom, this is where it all started, man. It's just amazing. And still to this day, this is a show that I will always go back to. It's always a show that I will regard as one of the greatest things that ever happened. I feel like the show deserves more praise than it actually gets. Like, okay, when it comes to sitcoms these days, we'll always talk about Friends, we'll always talk about Will and Grace, but I feel like they never really acknowledge this show here is one of the best TV shows ever, or at least of the '90s. But I think it's much deserved. And last thing I'll say, it just kind of broadened my mind to more African American sitcoms, right? So along with Martin, there was the Wayans brothers, there was the Jamie Foxx show. I
Living Single.
actually educated myself, Living Single, which was on Channel 2,
with
Channel 4,
real
which came
friends.
out. Right, exactly. Channel 4 had In Living Color. That was like the closest thing that they had, right, to a black sitcom. I had to go back and educate myself on Sanford and Son, and right now I'm educating myself on the Jeffersons, right? I mean, it's 13 seasons, dog, but I mean that was what the oh yeah, well, and that, and also Good Times as well. I mean, just going back and just really like familiarizing myself with those shows that pretty much help pave the way for the Fresh Prince, right? But yeah, I'm just glad that the show still has a loyal fan base. I'm still glad that younger viewers are checking this out and seeing, oh, this is young Will Smith and young Tatiana Ali and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is Alfonso Ribeiro. That's that guy. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just a testament to how great this show is, man. Ricardo, quick history on the show.
Yeah, roughly same history as yourself. It's a show that it is okay. So The Prince of Bel-Air is my personal favorite sitcom ever. It's a show that really holds up for me.
Nice.
But yeah, the when the show came on, that opening, you can't believe that they have a goddamn sitcom opening with hip hop, right? And it's such a great opening. It's just it tells its story. It opens the situation up. It's a hilarious bit.
It is.
In terms of like just the kind of what they do with the thing is like they kind of just use this time lapse kind of thing they're doing with the material, and they have it just bouncing around. It's stylish. That's why it works. And
it is.
The thing is, because I come from kind of an eclectic kind of household, I knew who Quincy Jones was. So it's like, oh, Quincy Jones is in this or doing something with this. I didn't get that sense. I just saw his name, right? And another thing too is no relation, but the person who is the creator of the show, and the show is roughly based on Benny Medina, right? That was a whole thing. That was a whole thing for me. Now I was like, wait, Benny Medina, you read it to us? Like, I know that, but that's a whole thing. But the central conceit of it and why the show always worked for me was it always they always got a sense of the authenticity of it. It didn't feel
Oh yeah.
contrived and fake like Cosby was. Like Cosby was for a different audience, mid '80s. It had to be the
Yeah,
perfect black
these are the
people.
non-scary black family, right? The
Right,
family
right,
that
right.
Yeah, the
Yeah, it's
safe
come.
yeah,
black.
Yeah, Cosby was designed to be entirely disarming, and well, what they did with this now is say, okay, yeah, have a wealthy black family, but they're not. It's everything about their wealth is plausible and felt realistic, right? I mean, early Fresh Prince had a kind of a contrivance state and thing, but later on when the show started working itself out better, it made that paradigm better. Like, and that relationship of understanding, hey, this is how quote unquote black wealth could look, but it didn't feel unattainable or unrealistic,
Right.
right?
right, exactly.
Right, nobody there was. It's like no, we know Philip Banks' life and we know his relationship with everybody and where he come from,
Yeah.
and what it did well. Really, really well as a show for me is that it did, and the show covers this quite well, especially with James Avery stuff. Is the idea of what this idea of disconnecting wealth from where a person come from and knowing that they had to use that to go forward. So
Yeah.
they have these great scenes in the show of you have a poster of Malcolm X in your room. I heard the brother speak.
I heard the
I
brother
love that.
speak. That's
Like
a
yeah,
classic,
all these things. And the mom as well did that. And well, you could get into that Janice Hubert versus Daphne
Daphne.
Maxwell. Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
Daphne Maxori.
Right. And why Fresh Prince works so well is because of that. It tapped into that energy of kind of black upper middle class type people who know the world and understand that you don't have to, trade off one worldview for the other. This whole, there's a whole pathological undertone in black community about having wealth and selling out and speaking well and that bullshit. And the show hit that on the nail of how to address this directly, right? Was because we was a little too disarming. This I thought struck that right balance, and then it's just a great comedy show. Like Carlton and Will have such great,
Yeah, their
bong,
chemistry. Oh my
yeah,
god.
everybody bonks off each other really, really well in terms of the dynamics of the family. Hillary bounces off everybody else. Carlton bounces off everybody else in his own way. Uncle Phil bounces off everybody else, and then you get this I forget the actor's name, but Jeffrey, who's Caribbean,
Oh yeah,
black British.
Joseph Marcel. Yeah,
Right, yeah, I think he's from St. Lucia originally or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I always
yeah, yeah,
loved his. I always loved the idea of a cynical black
yeah, yeah,
butler in a
right,
black family.
right. At the take, right, he felt like a nice evolution from Benson, right? All of that stuff, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff. And why the show works is that it just had that perfect dynamic, really perfect dynamic. And well, they address this in the documentary. The reason it was like that is because the actors themselves had good input into the characters' lives, right? They talk about the Wednesday and Thursday, how they get a chance on that Wednesday and Thursday to bring their ideas on and make the complaints and feedback into the material, right? So they say, look, black people will never do this, or this character will never say that, and da 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 da.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that I thought was so simple, just a simple way to make a show work and better, and that's why it was a hit. So that's just my feeling on the show itself, on the original sitcom.
Right.
Yeah.
CC, your quick history with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay, so I'm going to start with an unpopular take. I am not a sitcom person. Period. Like I'm barely a television. I'm barely a television person, right?
Okay.
Which is something I've been working on. Like I'm working my way through DS9 right now, in fact. But for the most part, and like there are a lot of sitcoms I grew up with in kind of like the periphery or the background of my life growing up.
Right.
And some of them still hold up. Other ones I've not really had a desire to revisit. Like Sanford and Son was definitely one that I really like. I actually grew up with that older generation of sitcoms a lot more than I did with like slightly more modern ones. So like I'm less familiar with Martin, but more familiar with like the Jeffersons and Sanford and Son, things like that. And some of those I revisit. Some of them like I'm not the biggest fan of revisiting things like Different Strokes and the Jeffersons. And Sanford and Son remains hilarious. But Fresh Prince is definitely top tier sitcom. Like it's weird because this is a genre I don't like. Because I I really like narrative-driven storytelling, especially in film and television. So sitcoms have always felt kind of like they're a slightly more narrative-driven version of like something like a soap opera, where like you end up with cyclical plots and things that go nowhere. But sitcoms at least have a little more development, and there's a little more things that get handled. It didn't help that I grew up primarily on something like The Cosby Show, which is definitely not aged the best. Like, it's one of those shows, like, I had a lot of fond memories of certain bits and certain things, but then I look back
Same here.
now, and it's not a show
I want. And you know the funny thing is, sorry to cut you there. The funny thing is that a lot of people have already ranked the Cosby Show as one of the best shows ever made, but no mention of Fresh Prince in it. It's funny.
No, right.
Like,
So
I will never.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Claude.
Like, if you want to argue that The Cosby Show was unnecessary and it was a historically important show, I could get behind that argument. But saying that it like is like one of the best shows ever implies that it still holds up. And there are too many ways in which it's like, I think that show in particular really falls off the bandwagon around season 3 and 4.
Right.
And then like I stopped like watching at that point, really
Right.
completely. And then by the time I checked back in for like later seasons, I was like, oh God, I'm glad I checked out. Fresh Prince still holds up. I cannot stress enough how no one is more surprised than me that this is like a show in a genre of a medium that I'm not the biggest fan of, and yet I still find myself revisiting it. I still find myself thinking of certain episodes. I find myself thinking of certain bits, characters, character dynamics, comedic writing. Like, as far as situational comedy and like actually handling real situations and character dynamics, it's some of the best you will find, really. Like, up there with like John Hughes and Kevin Smith movies. Like The Fresh Prince nails comedic writing, and it handles situation, handles domestic drama very well, and it handles black issues very well.
Yep.
That is something.
It does.
That's especially since like the 90s were extremely hit or miss with handling like just like discussing like black topics in particular. Like I still remember the episode of Fresh Prince where the parents' activist friend catches up with them and they all hang out and like they shelter her at their house, and then she like hits the road at the very end because she's still doing things. I remember I'll maintain that the episode where we first meet the one sister's the one aunt's white fiance is still one of the better.
Yes. That's one of my favorite. Sorry, that's not the Christmas special. He shows up. He shows back up in the following Christmas special.
It's a great comedy bit going. How do you go in there? And they do that good because the younger sister. It's a great moment. I know. Just a retort on a point. Just a retort on a point on you. The whole multi-camera sitcom paradigm is dead. Like it died a while ago.
Absolutely dead. Like one of the reasons one of the reasons I can't wait to see WandaVision is it's intriguing to think of contemporary pop culture addressing that medium.
Exactly, right. And the paradigm died, and you know, guys like Louis C.K. tried to bring it back in shows like Lucky Louie, stuff like that. So I could understand why it is you don't care about the sitcom, because it was a paradigm that you would. I don't
even get the appeal of Friends.
Well, no, Friends was always trash for me, but well.
Wow. But I always rejected Friends because this is a big joke back in the 90s. No black people. Maybe that I know that isn't true, but I'm sorry. From what I saw, no black people, right?
No, to me it was an aggressively unfunny show, and it really like catered to a style of humor that I don't understand. Like, I totally understand why it's successful. But holy crap!
On that laugh track so badly.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is,
and that show is also in the best TV shows of all time list, right? Look it up. It's
they hype the hell out of that. But the thing with it is that because the multi-camera sitcom paradigm is dead, I understand why you wouldn't care for it, because it's not something that like it's not something that you would get at all. Like so but I get that. And then go ahead.
It's like, but Fresh Prince is like the best use of that format. It's
that's
wild. It's like
that's why the show worked, because it transcended the material. It transcended the genre. They understood what to do to break the genre conventions in really clever ways. And then, well, to get back to your point about Cosby, right? Well, ignoring Bill Cosby himself, his legacy and thing. There's another aspect of his legacy that completely poisons the Cosby Show as a show, right? And it's not the sexual assault stuff. It's what he did career wise, like because Cosby deliberately catered to that, making this image of black people and what he think black people should be like, and pushing that paradigm, and pushing something that is just dishonest, like straight up dishonest.
And I will always, and the lengths to which he went to keep that pristine image,
right? And poison, as I always make the joke, look up Black Dynamite if you could find it, the animated series. There's an episode in season 2 that nails the problem with Bill Cosby. Like absolutely.
Oh
nails the
yeah,
problem.
yeah. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
absolutely
that.
nails why Bill Cosby is a problem, and why the legacy of the show is poisoned so well, because the sheer inauthenticity of the whole thing is a problem. Again, I get why that should get through. Right?
And to anyone who wants to defend the show, all I have to say is 2 words: Lisa Bonet.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
I know, right?
Yeah, and it's a whole sad, unfortunate thing that plays itself out. It caters to the most, to me, one of the most pathological things in American pop culture, which is the moral majority and the Reagan administration, right? That's what it was. And Fresh Prince just cut that out. Right? It's a total repudiation of it. It totally nailed the switching paradigm to the Clinton 90s. Like, it fed into that really well because the show was like 2 years before Clinton got through. It was a whole shift in terms of like how we should see the show. It lined up with a lot of like other shows that it had a show that I sure how much people remember the show Murphy Brown.
I
do.
Right. Yeah. And how it challenged the status quo as it was, and how he had just a big switch in terms of the pop culture landscape. And Fresh Prince, talk about hitting the nail on the head. Talk about hitting when the iron is hot. And again, no surprise, Quincy Jones was part of that because he understood how to play the game and going forward. And that's why we'll probably have to get to the documentary. I think
yeah. Well, I was going to talk. Yeah. Tracy.
Yeah,
well,
sorry, yeah.
Your quick history on the show, and then you could jump into what the premise is about of the special. That is.
Oh, that's fine. So for me, first of all, does anybody else remember Tatiana Ali on Sesame Street?
Yes.
But of course.
Very good. Because every so often I go through
forget he's Trinidadian.
Here's the thing with me, right? I discovered that years later about the idea that she was Trinidadian. I feel like it might have been late 90s, early 2000s, I think is when I found out about that. I could be wrong. But I always have this random, because that's how my brain works. I have this random memory of her with her electronic vocoder, whatever it is. Like, Tatiana. That's the memory that I have of her. Yeah. But in terms of the show, my life in terms of TV watching is a blender or a smoothie or a callaloo. In terms of the amount of crap that I watched and imbibe, I just float. So I lived in Jefferson's. I lived in Cosby's. I did the Friends thing. I did. I have a memory of watching A Different World, but my memory of Different World is basically Jasmine Guy and Dwayne. So I can't even tell you an episode that worked on this or that. In Living Color was a thing for me because I think before I even started to in Living Color, I think the Shabba song was the first thing, Mr. Ugly Man. Yeah. So my brain has
Marlon Wayans here.
Marlon Wayans. Oh my God. Yeah. So my brain and Jim Carrey's Informer. But anyhow, so Imposter. So I have this whole mesh of things, but there are, like I said, in terms of A Different World, I don't remember episodes. I just remember the interaction between Whitney and Dwayne. Where Fresh Prince was concerned, there's still episodes that are stuck with me, like what I call the Perry Mason episode, which is a random thing here. Uncle Phil, they had a party in the backyard, and Uncle Phil broke it up, and they decided to take Uncle Phil to court, and he decided to play along with it because he thought that they would just, get their shit together and be done with. And then you see Will and Carlton come in, and they start playing the Perry Mason music, and they both have their own versions of how this thing went on. And Uncle Phil looks like a daddy dearest kind of sensibility, ripping the unicorn off, and it's just so weird. But it's burned into my brain, and that is what I like about that's what I like about Fresh Prince. And then on a slightly, maybe this is a tangent, but when TV6 came out, CCN TV6 came out with that. First of all, when CCN TV6 came out, because I remember 1990 was the coup, and everything was the attempted coup, and everything was trying to restart. And then CCN TV6 came out with their programming, and they were fresh. And whereas TTT, whom I loved, could almost be like this was my mother and grandmother, and to me, TV6 felt more me because it had SWAT cats and all that kind of good stuff that was going on, and Fresh Prince. And I really enjoyed what Fresh Prince did, like the idea of them tackling the different, for what I would call like the different ideas of black or blackness. Because I'll give you a slight joke on my own life. I remember one time being in a taxi, the guy is playing some really loud dancehall music, and I'm like, hey, turn it on a little bit now. And my boy goes off to tell me about that we music, that's black music. And I look at him and I was like, at least tell me who Miriam Makeba is if you're going to talk about black music. And there's so the idea of what is black and how you fit into black, Carlton and his prep black, and then Will coming from his street level, for want of a better way of putting it.
There's a great episode with Carlton in a fraternity about that. That's one of my favorite episodes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So and for me, because like my circle has always been a weird mixed circle, even family wise. Seeing stuff like that really stuck with me. And then I as much as I like Aunt Viv Daphne, I adored Aunt Viv the first, because I could never remember her name.
Janet
Hubert. Yeah, she was great though. Like you tend to forget how great she is because the seasons the show was so you're split right down the middle. So you have Janet for the first half. And the other one, forget her name, Daphne the second half now. Yeah.
I tell you this. I mean, I have some variation of coordination in terms of dancing, but ever so often I will still try to do that thing that she was doing inside the ballet. Ballet studio. And the hilarity of teaching those little young girls, listen, this is what time it is, and then it's after you walk out, what happens to your body.
Right.
But I loved it, and I'll even throw this out here. Hillary was one of my favorite characters because, not to sound like this, but it's like I enjoyed her daftness, or her, and maybe not even daft, just like the seemingly surface level of her. And so rewatching the reunion special, and they showed that clip where Trevor is going to marry her.
Oh yeah,
I remember,
will you marry me?
And I remember, I mean, that's pretty horrifying, but I remember laughing, and it was, and the fact that it sticks with me, the fact that when you watch the special and you hear them talk or they show clips and you're like, oh yes, that.
I actually remember the Sunday night that episode aired on TV6 and how I felt when you heard that splat though.
And my house always had like all kind of weird, different types of music and stuff. So I was and still am into Tom Jones. So for that, I am here for But so for me, Will's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was and still remains one of the TV shows that stands out in this soup of my brain of things that I have lived on. And I'm very, very happy in terms of getting to see this reunion special, which for me was cathartic and a bit of fresh air and just joy.
Yeah.
So, and I'll give a relative synopsis of the special. It's 30 years later, and so everybody goes back. They go back to the set to talk about the memories, the legacy, the importance of the show, how they got cast. I did not know there's a Will gives a backstory there as to how he got cast, and
Right.
I never knew anything about that, one, and two, it kind of fits into some of the lore of Quincy Jones, and
Right.
I was like, that is hilarious. So you get to hear how they actually were cast onto the show, and you got to see where they are, like where they are now. They haven't talked about like where their careers are now, but you got to see them now, especially like Karen Parsons, who to be honest with you, after a Fresh Prince, I can't really remember some of these other stuff that she's done, but she will forever be Hillary for me.
Ladies
Yeah,
Man.
she
That's the
was
only
in.
movie. Ladies Man.
Okay, Ladies
There you
Man,
go.
right? I didn't know
That's the
that she
only
was in
movie I
that, but
can remember. Yeah, that's the only other movie I remember.
right,
Um,
I remember her from Class Act, which was
Right.
that
Right.
kid and
Dude,
play high school
right.
film,
Mhm.
right?
So even that, like, that swipes over my brain. And then of course, James Avery being the soul and the heart of the show,
Yeah.
and they had a whole segment there that really, I was like, oh, okay, so we're crying tonight.
Yeah.
That really was a thing. But I will tell you, one of the major things, and funny enough, right now they're doing a red table talk with Janet and Will, is bringing Aunt Viv the First
Yeah.
onto and
Yeah.
having a conversation. There's a small conversation that happens between, a small meeting that happens between the two Aunt Vivs,
Right.
but the conversation between Will, because, like, I mean, I live online, and so you'll end up seeing a headline of like Aunt Viv, Miss Hubert saying something about Will, and then Will saying something else, and Jada will jump in because reasons,
Right.
and the sit down with it, I felt, what it felt like, to be honest. Your uncle gets married, there's a messy divorce. You don't know the full extent of what the deal is. There's a new wife. You fall in love, or you like the new wife, but then you
Right.
get to hear some of the stuff that was leading up to the divorce of the first wife, and you suddenly realize, okay, so there's a story here.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was really cathartic for me, and I suspect it would have been cathartic for Will and Miss Hubert. And I mean, I tend to be a little cynical sometimes because cameras and TV, and everybody smiles and does their bit, but at the same point in time, I really do feel like maybe there is a turning of the corner. So, and of course, it's littered and peppered with episodes, little snippets of episodes and stuff like that, so that you
Yes.
remember how it was. I personally, I enjoyed it. I will go back and watch it. I will return to it maybe a third and a fourth time because of the cathartic nature and because of the nostalgic sensibilities that it was. It still remains for me. Freshman still remains for me one of the most prime television shows that I have ever sat down and watched. Fun fact: I was Saturday years old when I realized that the little boy who played Nicky
Right.
in Fresh Prince was actually his Will's son in Independence Day.
Boy, you really
Sorry,
didn't know
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
You didn't
that's
know
true.
that?
That's true.
I know, dude. I
Wow.
don't
Okay.
know how I missed this. I
Okay. Wow.
literally don't know how I missed this for all these years. But
Yeah,
I
okay.
will sit down and I will watch Independence Day and I will see
Yeah.
Dylan. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, cool, Dylan. Nice. But it's only yesterday I was like, wait, no. So yeah, me equals daft. But that whole special for me was something that I felt like it was like going home. It was like
Yeah.
going back home and seeing close family, and friends, and then for different other reasons, like the absentee father and how the father figure role plays in. That's
Yep.
something that a good few people have had to deal with. I've had to resolve my own relationship with my father,
Right.
which is a whole Fresh Prince meets Grey's Anatomy kind of vibe. But
Wow. Yeah.
like legitimately, there are stories.
Right, right.
But it's that, and it was it it's a nice time capsule for me to kind of go back and remember how I felt in the 90s watching this show play out. And on a slightly different thing, growing up, I would watch certain TV shows and stuff and not realize the historical or cultural relevance of it. It was just a really good TV show. But now you go back and you look at stuff like Fresh Prince, and you watch it in the way how TV landscape was back then, and then what
Right.
produced afterwards. You're like, this shit is amazing. So for me, that
You,
was
you could
just great.
actually give your rating one time, huh?
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll wind up because rambling on reasons. But I give it. I'm gonna give it a full five. I would
Nice,
invite
nice,
anyone to
nice.
go. I really would invite everyone to go watch it at
Yeah.
some point in time in their life. Yeah, that it really is good. And like I said, they're doing the Red Table talk with Will and Aunt Viv to kind of flush out a little bit more because we only got to see like a little piece of the talk in the reunion. But yeah, that's me. The end.
Nice, nice, nice. All right, Ricardo, your thoughts on the show and final rating.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It is the last dance for Will Smith. A little bit, right?
Yeah.
It
Last
does.
Dance, which by the way is one of
Yeah,
the year's best docu-series. If you haven't
yeah,
watched it, watch
right.
it. I think it's still on you. I think it's still on
Netflix,
Netflix. I
yeah,
think.
right. So
But
yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah. What the last dance was. So Jordan, this is for Will Smith, and a little bit. I'll admit, it felt a little bit at times, a little bit of a puff piece for Will, right? It's Will having to clean up his act and kind of come into terms. But I do appreciate him making the effort, right? Especially in everything involving Janet Hubert, and who had to go to the side because of his career and his career coming up and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, this was pure nostalgia buttons being pushed. They did a great job with setting up these paradigms, why the show worked, the history of the show. They covered everything in terms of like, the authenticity of the show. That is why it worked, right? In my opinion, as I said, it's my favorite sitcom ever, and it evolves properly from Cosby and that kind of thing. And yeah, this just does a great job of bringing in the memories. They have a lot of great little things in it, like just like most of the little stories behind the scenes I was always aware of. Like they had that whole thing in the beginning where Will used to read everyone's lines and then say his line. Right, I knew that
Yeah,
before.
that I
I
didn't
actually,
know about prior to watching this.
but that's the thing. I first learned about that from a TV show called, I don't know if anybody remember this game show. There's a game show back in the early 2000s called Beat the Geeks. Anyone knows what that is?
Nope.
It
No.
Right.
sounds eerily familiar, but
It's a right. So this is a game show that could only exist before the internet became big. What it was like a game show in the same style of Iron Chef, but for pop culture. You come on, you take on one person, and then you have to battle a geek. And it had three mainline geeks and one specialist geek that came in. That was a different specialist geek for every episode. So you had a TV geek, a movie geek, and a music geek. And then you had to pick which geek you battle if you think you were good at that thing. And then they would have bring on like a specialist geek within a genre. So you would have one episode might have had the Star Trek geek or something like that. And what it did, however, is that they used to drop some knowledge about something. The geek would drop some like deep knowledge about something going forward. You could totally tell these are the kind of guys that basically started TV tropes. Like it's that. It's that just
Oh,
dumping of
I was on
dump.
board.
Yeah, it's those.
Did
It's,
Oh.
I
that.
wonder. I'll
okay,
be
okay,
hard
okay.
pressed. I actually would probably try to look up these guys and now and see what they're doing now in their life. But that is the first time I learned about that. So they talked about how in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, how Will Smith used to read everyone's line and why he was not that good of an actor. And the TV talked about his progress as an actor, coming up in the show now. Like him to move from the first season, which he was pretty bad, and it's just Quincy Jones just pushing this kid forward into the limelight and making sure he's great because he could see the greatness now. And he just have to turn the diamond in the rough and how he moved from that bad acting, and he say how he used to mount his lines. And like, wait, Will Smith used to mount his lines? I remember just seeing reruns on Nick at Night. Oh shit, Will Smith used to run it, used to mount his line. That's to verify that now. And yeah, they addressed that thing. Then they addressed the whole, the stuff with Quincy Jones and that whole, all these little interesting backstories about it. Quincy Jones, I was marginally aware of all of those stories as well.
Yeah.
Because Quincy Jones have so much shit to tell about Hollywood. Like, he know everything.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I love how they had Will Smith like referencing Quincy Jones' greatness, how many Grammys he had in the background and all of that stuff. Because yeah, Quincy Jones,
I remember that.
Jones is pound for pound the GOAT. Sorry. And why this works so well is that they just get into all of this nice history stuff. They talk about the audition tapes, which I love to watch. That was great. That was pretty good. They just them bouncing off each other. Tatiana still looking damn good. I ain't gonna lie. Right.
I know, right? She's like what, 41?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, for real. They just had them just talking about each other, and then so I was like, it's fun and nice, and then I started getting a lump in my throat when they started to get to James Avery Judd. And I wait, Master Shredder himself, right?
Yeah.
That was so good what they did there, and yes, that's how James had his music and the type of actor he was, and how they bounce off each other. Then I was like, all right, that's emotional and good too. And then they get into the stuff with Janet Hubert, and I thought that was really, really cathartic. How she get to tell her side of the story. How she just make a good point. Look, if you're a quote unquote problematic black woman in Hollywood, that is a death sentence, and she was right. Sorry to say. Regardless of what you think about her and her attitude about the situation, and they didn't frame it as if anybody. You could understand where both sides coming from. I like how they balanced it. It felt balanced. In terms of like that argument, and Will was 21 at the time. He now blowing up. She's an older actor. Yes, she had some legitimate emotions, but at the same time, she was not particularly right in terms of like dumping on him because he quote unquote is not an actor, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
she engaged in a little bit of elitism, gatekeeping herself. I thought that was really cathartic in terms of forgiveness and the nature of that back and forth now. And then they just cater to all of the nice nostalgia moments, and this is how you're supposed to do a reunion special. Like, holy shit, they did a great job with it. They sung the song, they had all the bits with jazz, all the guest actors. I thought they could have. That's one thing I thought they could have addressed a little better. There's all the guest stars. Like, they just had one or two of the popular guest stars. Don Cheadle, they had a whole bit with Donald Trump. I remember that. But I thought they could have showed all these up and coming actors who was in the show was in the show. You could find Tyra Banks and all these people going to go on to become big people going forward.
Nia Long, even though she
right, yeah, like a lot of
Will's stuff like Boise Hood, but she make her name in this movie, in this show here too. Yeah,
exactly. A lot of Will's girlfriends when he was in college. I argue that the college stuff is the better stuff in the show, not the high school stuff. Like, when they went to college, I thought that was the better time in the show. That was when the show got really interesting and better. And I think it was to match up with a different Will, which was like effectively a college show, right?
Yeah, correct.
So why it worked for me is because they did the black college experience really, really well. That black Greek culture, that's something that didn't blow up until Kanye West, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought this just absolutely was great. I am going to give it like almost a perfect score, 9.5 out of 10. It was excellent for me. That's my rating there.
All right. Well, I agree totally with you and Tracy as well. So just to get the one gripe out of the way, just the one thing that was just itching the roof of my mouth while I was watching this, right? I wish we got just a little bit more of Joseph Marcel. I felt that he was just a little bit to the background. I mean, he spoke and things, like they have a little one-on-one interview with him, but just bits too. And I felt like they could have established how he got onto the show, his role as being cynical, black butler and stuff like that. Even like for me, I was hoping that we'd get to see the I quit moment, but we didn't see that. I love that moment
when they thought he won the lottery. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's
a great moment on that show. I love it. Yeah. That is the only gripe I have with this show here. Everything else is pitch perfect in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love this. I truly, truly love this. Um, I love how well paced it was, right? So it gave you the, oh, you know what I mean? This is a reenactment of the old set. Like we actually rebuilt it for this one purpose here.
Mhm.
And of course, Will's the first one to come in. He puts on the light because if you remember the final
Yeah.
episode, he's the one who turns off the light, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then having everybody show up one by one was really cool. And I just love how the film just kind of built up the rapport they had amongst each other. You know what I mean? How they got onto the show in the first place. Also wish that we saw a little bit more audition tapes. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we saw Karen Parsons' zone, we saw
Yeah.
Alfonso
Alfonso
Ribeiro's
Ribeiro,
zone. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That was cool. I just love how they just kind of built up how everything just got started, right? Even right down to how Will got into this in the first place. Because, yeah, I mean, the man was a well established hip hop artist, right? He was the first person, well, him and DJ Jazzy Jeff to be nominated for a Grammy for Best Hip Hop
Right.
Album, right?
Yeah.
And, drama took
Yeah.
place there. But it was just amazing how he was able to just tell how he got into the show in the first place, right? You know what I mean? Because, if you go on Wikipedia, you find out, oh, you know what I mean, Will he had some debt issues he had to deal with, so it always gives the impression that he kind of pushed himself to be into the show now. But it's like, no, well, Quincy Jones, was there, and he saw promise in this in Will, right? And I mean, if it wasn't for that, his career would not have blown up. His film career would not have blown up the way he did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just having acting
Mhm.
as a fallback plan, just something that still inspires me that, you don't have to just stick to one thing for the rest of your life. You could branch out and do different things, you know what I mean? Which is what Will Smith does, and that continues to inspire me, right? I really dug the behind the scenes stories. Like I love the aspect of, prepping Wednesdays, having the table reads on Wednesdays,
Yeah.
Tuesday doing
Yeah.
paneling, blocking, all that kind of stuff. The cast bringing in their own contributions to the table, logical, sensible contributions, and all for the purpose
Yeah.
of saying, hey, we want to present these characters as authentic as possible. Jay. We want
Right.
them to be real black characters and not just caricatures or a dumbed down version or watered down version of what the black experience really is. You know what I mean?
Right.
I really dug also too, like how lively the Friday night shoots were, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how
That was
I'd even
something
touch
to
on one of
see.
my all-time favorite moments with Carlton breaking the fourth wall, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
I never forgot how I felt seeing that for the first time and thinking this is just amazing though, because you would think you hear the audience in the background, but they like kind of excluded out the experience. But through this show, you kind of show no, the audience was really part of it, right? And ever so often I almost forget this. It will always kind of remind you, hey, this is part of a set and this is part of this sort of little living community that we have here, right? So it's not
Yeah.
just about
Yeah.
us on the stage, but it's about the crowd and how they respond to things, right? And then of course they hit you with the James Avery stuff, and I was waiting for it, but
Yeah.
when it came though, it was just this powerful tribute, and
Yeah. Sure.
there was no dry eye on that set, Trent. Everybody teared up, Trent. And I would admit I was this close to tearing up too. Like I imagine if I watch this again, I will, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
had that lump in my throat too.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, okay. They do the thing with James Avery, okay. So Janet, when she's coming in, right? Because remember throughout you just seen Daphne on set, right? And that moment literally with Will and Janet, boy,
Yeah.
that was the moment that really hit me in the gut, boy.
Mhm.
Like you
Mhm.
guys said, it is the most cathartic moment in the show though. And I love how both individuals approach his situation. Like, Will, acknowledges that yeah, he had a bit of an ego problem. He was
Right.
young, his acting career was blowing up, and he could have gone different places, right? Which he actually did with his acting career. And as such, he just kind of felt like, well, why is Janet acting like this? You know what I mean? And of course, it's because of what she was going through with her pregnancy and marriage and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he kind of just saw that as, oh, you just don't like me anymore because I'm popular. I'm the top name in the marquee, blah, 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 right? It's how they sat down 27 years later and just kind of talk about it. But really, at the heart of it, just saying, look, it's 27 years. I mean, we could feel a kind of way about it, but at the end of the day, it's 27 years. Let me just shake hands and move on. You know what I mean? Let me
Yeah.
just move on.
Right.
Like, go,
Yeah. Yeah.
both lived lives, right? And I love how Will kind of comes and says, when I went through a divorce too, I went through this and that and that. So I'm not the same person as I was back in like what 92, 93, right? And that to me was the most powerful moment of this show here. Like we could kind of argue, James Avery tribute was it? But now, boy, that sit down with Will and Janet, dude, that took it for me. That just blew me away. That to me is one of the best moments of 2020, bar none.
Right.
So, and then of course, well, they kind of end things off on a really heartwarming note. Still hitting you in the feels and all that kind of stuff. They played the song in the end. I wish we could have gotten like a full performance of it, but what they led up to afterwards was pretty nice as well. So it ties everything up neatly. I haven't seen a lot of reunion shows in my life though, but this hands down to me is the best one, just mainly because of how it established how tight knit of a family these actors are, right? To the point that you don't really see much of their real families because of how much they work together on 6 years, right?
Right.
But it's just how it was just able to hit you with the nostalgia. And I'll make the slight argument that you kind of have to be a fan of the show to really, really get into it. But because this show is just such a pop culture watershed now, it's like, wait, you haven't seen Freshman? You haven't at least seen that scene where he tears up in front of Uncle Phil? You're like, come on, that's everybody's seen that, right? So whether you're a fan or not, you kind of understand the relevance of the show. So while it does play on, yes, this is for the fans, I would argue that you don't even have to be a fan to really appreciate this. So just the mere fact that it's just these actors coming together after all these years and just talking about their ups and downs. It's kind of ironic too of the circumstances that kind of led to them, reuniting. That would be James Avery and of course burying the hatchet with Janet Hubert. But I'm sorry, those just made for just some powerful moments, and I would say stuff that I've never seen before in a reunion show. So hands down, this is the best reunion show ever, in my opinion. This is one of the best shows of 2020 period. This is one of the best things I've seen in pretty much a shitty year. I'm gonna go high with this one. I'm gonna give this a strong 4.5 out of 5. I could have maybe with a few more viewings, I may bumped it up to a full 5 stars, right? But yeah, this is a real deal. This certainly lived up to all the hype that was building up to it. This is, and you could argue, well, it's just Will Smith just trying to, just kind of, sweep this thing under the rug so he can move forward, which in a way it is, but really it's just this heartfelt tribute to, just this celebration of a show that, pretty much just changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, it impacted my generation, impacted yours, and CC's, and everybody. A lot of people that I know, right? It still remains one of my all-time favorite shows, and this to me will remain my top favorite reunion show. So yeah, if you haven't seen this show, go see it as soon as. CC, I strongly recommend you watch this special.
Like, I will say the big thing that was the big reason I didn't check it out was, first of all, HBO Max. And I don't have HBO Max, and I have a non-piracy policy, especially now that I live here. Like, I don't have a reason. Like,
well, much respect. Well,
because I know, and like I had no issues pirating when I lived in Trinidad, right? But like I live here, like I can get DVDs from Walmart like $3. Like it feels weird to pirate when like the stuff that I have access to is so accessible,
Yeah,
if like
I understand.
No, I like we have. Yeah, no, that is not an issue for me because I have HBO, like, so it's part of the package. So it's like I get the show. Thing there, yeah.
And then like the other big thing is that like you were saying, like I'm glad you said this is like one of the best reunion show you've seen, because my big thing is that like whenever I see trailers or things for reunion shows, I am never, like the couple I've seen and then like the few times I see them, I'm never interested. So a big reason I didn't watch this was, as much as I love the show, and even a little bit because I love the show, I wasn't like, oh man, they're trotting the cast out for a reunion special. Everyone's doing it. Like it's on a streaming service. We gotta get like, we gotta get all the big names attached and everything. Like as far as like addressing all of the, and I didn't like. I mean, you never know if they're going to address all of the like really impactful stuff or not, or whether this is just going to be like a puff piece, especially given where Smith has been lately. You know, like it's always like you're always sitting. But so like it is a certain amount of cynicism, and I'm also definitely like, listen, 2020. I want to keep my fond memories of Fresh Prince. Don't give me like a cast reunion. I don't need 2020 to mess up Fresh Prince, you know?
Right.
But
right.
but it's good to hear that it's. I'll probably, when I can, I'll probably check it out at this point. If it's like since it's like that good, if you're all saying that, like I'll probably
Yeah, or at least find someone who has HBO Max and
right.
just tell them, even if you're not a fan of the show, I would really love to see this reunion special. Please, you just check it out, right?
And I am
But yeah, folks. Yeah, sorry.
And I am a big fan. I will always maintain the episode. I will always maintain the episode that talked about interracial relationships still holds up. The episode that talked about the episode where they talk about like getting pulled, like being being black and being pulled over by cops because they see a
powerful episode.
Always that writing still holds up. So
they flip it too, because there's a great episode about crime too, where Carlton got a gun. Great episode.
Which I completely forgot about, right?
Yeah.
And this was always a thing with like 90s TV shows, especially involving African American characters. They will always involve something about crime or
right. And that goes
like I'll never forget Family Matters. This was a show that was on Channel 4 actually, and that was also a black sitcom that I gravitated to. Yeah, also addressed this as well. And just in closing, speaking of Family Matters, I don't know when we're gonna get the Family Matters reunion special. God forbid, I hope it's not when Carl Winslow, knock on wood, passes away. I really, really hope not.
But that's the thing too, is that it's because Family Matters is exactly why Fresh Prince worked, right? It's because Family Matters was effectively a blue collar Cosby, right? But it's still try to tap into that same energy of being idyllic to the point of inauthenticity. And that's why I just felt I'd love to see that play out.
Yeah, and I just felt that personally just kind of deviated from, it's about the black family and the struggles into, and Steve Urkel, let's see what shenanigans he gets into. Literally the series finale involves Steve in space and Laura saying, yes, I will marry you.
Yeah. That show went off the rails completely. Ever seen the classic? That Key and Peele sketch about it? Yeah?
Maybe you guys can help me with this, but because I've barely seen any Family Matters, I have a vivid memory of some kind of robot. I don't know if this was that real?
That totally
yes,
okay.
It was.
I really don't dedicate a lot of my brain to Family Matters.
Family Matters turned to total nonsense. Look up the Key and Peele sketch about Family Matters is the funniest thing ever, but they absolutely nail what the show was about, Judd. The show was so fucking weird. It was so weird.
I didn't even remember the finale of that, to be honest.
We had to get it.
No, I saw it twice. That's how I remember.
I don't want to waste too much time, but basically what happened is that Family Matters effectively became, was he the creatures in The Walking Dead in The Last of Us, like a parasite zombie of a show.
Right.
What happened. That's what happened. Where it is a show that would have gotten cancelled if it wasn't for Steve Urkel. Like a show would have got probably seasons and then get cancelled. But then Steve Urkel just became this mega hit, and he was everywhere, and the show became about him. But it totally became like a zombie of the what the show is about, because it's like it barely addresses the show at all. They try to rope things in a little bit with when Steve was in high school with Laura, and they have a couple okay episodes there, but the show is total nonsense. It's all this like Steve Urkel should be a billionaire by now, and yet he's still effing around with Laura and them in school. Like what?
I know, right? Like there was I always said what was the other love interest?
Myra.
No, not Myrtle. Myra.
Myra.
Kind of stop at Myra though. Myra's fine though, in my opinion. But anyway, but yeah, like that is a show that I have never revisited, even though I kind of watched it twice because it was just on TV, sort of like syndication wise. But yeah, I would kind of love to see a reunion.
No, I've never revisited it because as a kid, I have a vague memory of some kind of killer Urkel bot, and that terrified me as a small child.
Yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing.
Never revisited.
That was a thing. Dude, the man had teleportation. he had the ability to manipulate DNA on a fundamental level with a goddamn box, television, a fridge.
Yeah, the man used
It
to
was-
turn to Stefan Urkel,
Yeah,
used to turn to a
it was
Bruce Lee
weird. He
version
could clone
of
himself.
himself.
He made clones. He could clone himself, so the
What the
human
hell
clone was a
happened? I
thing.
thought this was a sitcom.
I tell you, the show.
I
Weird.
know,
Look
right?
up.
It turns
Just
to like a weird sci-fi comedy basically.
yeah, no, but
That's what
look
it
up,
is.
just look up the Key and Peele sketch. You could the Key and Peele
Alright.
sketch nails it, like absolutely nails it.
Alright.
So funny. It's so funny and well done. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I said. Anyway, well, the show.
Right. So just
wrap.
in closing, guys. Yes, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion special, not to be confused with the still to be greenlit Family Matters reunion special, is the real deal. So yeah, this is one of the best shows of 2020. This is gonna be updated. I'm telling you guys one time, it's gonna be in my top 5 best TV shows of 2020, hands down. So yeah, definitely check it out. So in closing, CC, where can we find you online?
You can find me at CC the Martian on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram and Spotify. I really would appreciate if you drop by my YouTube in particular. I'm in grad school doing film studies right now. Some of my film work is up there on YouTube. Greatly appreciate
Nice.
a drop, a like,
Nice.
maybe even a subscribe. Who knows? Facebook, it's just Facebook and LinkedIn, CC Lilford.
All right. Tracy, where can we find you online?
Instagram as We Are Tracy and Facebook under Tracy J. Hutchings, TRACY, Tracy J. Hutchings, or YouTube, which is basically Tracy Hutchings.
Right.
All right. Ricardo, where can we find you online?
I'm Pasat Armedi at Armedi on Twitter. That is at RMEDDY. And then you can just type in Ricardo Medina on Facebook. You can find me there.
All right. On Twitter, you can find me at Bear Beat Bailey. On Instagram, you can find me at Bears Beats and Bailey. On Facebook, just look for my name, Matthew Bailey, along with a Legally Black blog official fan base, where you find a link to this podcast, as well as the other episodes of Bears Beats and Bailey and Retrospect Reviews that we've done over the past few years. So, guys, thank you all for coming through. You know what I mean? This was a blast. You know, we just going back down taking a trip down memory lane, pretty much.
Yeah.
We've encountered the bad, like that which shall not be named, but we also went through the great as well. So, yeah, man, it was a blast, guys. Thank you for coming through. Right?
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. So once again, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever this is. This was Matthew Bailey and Ricardo Medina. Thanks for coming through.
Hello. Bye.
Tracy Hutchins, thanks for coming through.
Hey, happy Life Day, guys.
And you beat me to it. And CC Lilford, thanks for coming through.
Live long and prosper. He stole my life day quote.
Yes. And yes, folks, happy Life Day in case you decided to listen to this every November 17th. I appreciate this. Thank you very much for that in advance. Happy Life Day. Have a Merry Christmas. Don't go paranging outside. Stay in your house. Just be
Watch
safe
movies.
out there, right? I watch movies. I'm not sure about the theatrical stuff for now, but yeah, just stay safe out there. Yeah, watch movies at home. You know what I mean? Watch One Woman 1984 at home if you have no choice, man. And yeah, that's it, man. So take care. Peace.